Well, good evening. It's 86 degrees and there is not a wind at all. And it's okay right now. Ask me when I finish this. But I will have finished talking to you, so we won't know until tomorrow. There are a bunch of issues. I don't know that there's anything really new about chasing Trump around the room, except everybody says any day now it's going to happen, and maybe it will. The assurance that it looks like it's going to happen because of everything else is enough to take care of my impatience right now. The issues that concern me, I'm a director of the Soil and Water Conservation District in the county where I am, and I'm also the treasurer of the group, and I'm also in charge of 6 counties trying to oversee meetings about shared agendas. And one of those is, what do we do about solar farming? And it's much more of a heated argument than I realized, particularly in the rural places. And there's a great story in today's Washington Post about people reacting in Ohio. And it's a great story because they go beyond it and they talk about what are the issues. There's, of course, a lot of false statements, and then there are also true concerns. And some say that solar farms should only be on bad land, meaning that it's not good for farming, or in cities and so forth, putting it on the tops of roofs and things like that. And there is a concern about, will the technology today become obsolete, and then what do you do with all of this? I tend to think that we can do solar farms, and if we're imaginative, we can do them almost anywhere. But there's a bunch of flat earthers out there, and they mix into this issue. But there are also farmers who are quite educated about it. And this Thursday, I'm supposed to have a meeting as the chair of these 6 counties to solicit what proposed legislation they have that they want the state to take. And one of the issues that we've been focusing on is solar farms. And so some people have said if you locate the solar farms in such a way, they won't interfere with grazing. Some are upset about tilling. Others claim that there is runoff from the solar cells somehow that affects the groundwater. That's a new one on me. It's not beyond the possibility, but I don't think it's true. And so there's a mixture of things that may be true and things that may be false. The bottom line is that the saving in greenhouse gases is significant, enormous. And that's one of the reasons why it's being pushed. Also, we're exhausting the other means of getting energy. Here on the East Coast, there's a wind tunnel up the East Coast that could supply all the energy you need. But then the question is offshore, what about birds? What about interference with traffic and so forth? I think all those problems are negotiable. And better to have that than drills out there pumping oil into the water. So this is an issue that's probably coming to a neighborhood close to you, because it's going to determine how one gets their energy. Now, if you think about it, if I put up a bunch of solar cells, if I do it right, then I don't need the local energy company. Also, a distributed energy system means that if there's a terrorist attack, the power goes down somewhere, it doesn't have to go down here. You know, and the beef about solar is, yeah, but what do you do when there's no sun? That's what batteries are for. And the question is, have we reached the level of batteries that they take care of that? I did look at land once in Colorado. It was so off the grid. No water, no electricity. You couldn't even take the rainwater because the rainwater was treated as a resource, and it went into the ground, and then it went further down, and that's where it was owned. If you interfered with it, and this is now a long time ago, it would be a misdemeanor, and they policed it. So talked to a woman in her 70s, And boy, she had this down. They delivered water to her in a huge drum every week. She had set up her own generator system. She was quite something, and she was pretty happy with it. So it's possible, but that didn't seem to be my cup of tea. And I think some of those things are better if you're doing them in your 30s than older than that. And I don't know what I would have done except write the great American novel and visited Santa Fe, which was nearby, Santa Fe, New Mexico. So that's the story on solar. Now, in terms of political sunlight, you may remember Biden at his State of the Union sort of got a pledge that they weren't going to take Social Security from the elderly. Okay. And they all sort of sheepishly showed up. But now there are 3 Republicans vying for the presidential nomination who are prepared to cut Social Security and have said it. Isn't that remarkable? And the way they intend to do it is they intend to cut it among the 20s and 30s. In other words, you're going to end it, Social Security, for those in their 20s and 30s. So what is that about? That is indirectly killing the system, because the feeder for those who are older is those who are younger. And that's why some call it a Ponzi scheme. And the trouble is, depending upon, birth rates, there can be an unevenness in the system. So you have to plan for that. But if you take out a feeder of the system, that is the 20s and 30s, while it may not affect the seniors today, the seniors 5 and 10 years from now will be affected, and the system may fail. So this is something to keep in mind when one is listening to these Republicans. So who are the 3 geniuses? You want to guess? No? How about DeSantis, of course, right? Pence, and Nikki Haley. They all think this makes sense. Now, here's the other thing. The young people are already excited by the Republicans saying that they shouldn't get their loans forgiven in part or whole. And now they're telling them, we're going to cut out your Social Security. Now, years ago, the Republican speaker ran for president. Remember Paul Ryan? And he was for cutting Social Security and Medicare. Now, you got to wonder about a guy like Manchin, who's explained that, when he goes home, the primary source of livability for his constituents is Social Security and Medicare or Medicaid. So it's not going to have, intelligent responses anywhere where you have that formula. I guess they figure we can attack the young who may not be involved in the political system, and so then down the road they'll find out that we're not taking care of them in their older age because they didn't take care of themselves in their younger age by voting to continue Social Security. Interesting, don't you think? The problem with America is that we have all these people gaming the system to do less when we should be doing more. And that it takes more energy to do less than to do the right thing and to do more. But this is where we are. And we need more people sending tweets or X's or FBs and conversation and writing letters saying, take care of this nation and forget this notion of some sort of monarchy or autocracy and failing to provide us with what we need in health and safety and individual rights and liberties. And the Republicans are so far removed from that. And so DeSantis, while he's busy fighting whether or not it was a great benefit to be a slave, because maybe you could then, I don't know, become a blacksmith. Somebody's been talking about today. The simple matter is, what do they call it, Occam's razor. When there are several alternatives, the one that is the most obvious is the correct one. So, does DeSantis really think we should be teaching kids that slaves got benefits out of being slaves? Namely, that to learn a trade was worth not having your freedom. Now, we don't have a lot of indentured servants right now, which was the kissing cousin of being a slave. And if you were a person of color, certainly in the earlier days, there was the assumption that you were a slave and not free. The peril of being a slave and becoming a blacksmith for 17 hours a day and being separated from your wife and your kids who went elsewhere sold, and as slavery continued in this country, by reproduction, we no longer had to import slaves. This was a great advance. Now we could be against slavery because we could limit the market to the slaves who are already here and reproducing. So when you do that test of what is the most obvious, there's only really one conclusion. You don't believe in the freedom of all people. You don't believe they're equal before the law. And you're a bigot. Now, why does anybody say DeSantis is a bigot? You always dance around. Oh, what could he be saying? Oh, that's funny and that's ridiculous. No, just say the thing that's true at the heart of it. He's a bigot. He is against persons of color. He is against our citizens knowing and learning what we did to fight slavery and who were the heroes, including the white heroes and the black heroes and the ones who made great advances, who were just bundles of contradiction, and still they did good things despite themselves. That's a story. And you know, history is much more interesting than the most, hard to believe story people sometimes tell. The things that we do to each other as compared to the things we do for each other. There are magnificent examples on both sides of the ledger. Why can't we spend all our energy on the good side of the ledger? What is it about the human toxin that can't always do the right thing? Takes a shortcut, hurts others, gets into impossible situations. Well, we've had that mystery since the Declaration of Independence said we were all equal and that we were equal under the law. So, it's numbers. Ironically, the numbers of the minority, when they are not the enlightened ones, is offset by the majority, which presently is, if not enlightened, more equanimous, more sensitive to the rights of the individuals to be free, to be treated equally, to get equal opportunity. But we have an illness in America. We've had it since the beginning, and we're paying for it dearly right now because we didn't get spot on the dime when this started to go off the rails, and these guys, Trump and company, and all the imitators, his corrupt minions, kept going and doing things that have compromised America. So those are a couple of my thoughts on this warm day, and you're welcome to my Cathedral of Trees, and I'll talk to you tomorrow if I can. Bye-bye.